Hey coin lovers and treasure hunters. Welcome back Global Coin News. Imagine opening an old shoebox in your attic and finding, tucked between a 1967 Dove penny and some forgotten tokens, a tiny copper coin so rare that its value could put a down payment on a car. Today, we're diving deep into a hidden world of Canadian 1-cent pennies. Coins that once jingled in everyday change, now quietly fetching tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars in auctions and private sales. These aren't ordinary pennies, each tells a story of royal transitions, minting oddities, and dramatic shifts in Canadian coinage history. In this video, we'll explore the 6 most valuable Canadian pennies, discover what makes them so rare, look at their unique features and condition requirements, compare their approximate dollar value in today's market, share tips for collectors who want to recognize these treasures, and finish with guidance on how to protect such rare finds. Whether you're a seasoned numismatist, a casual coin hunter, or just someone who once found a penny and wondered, could this be special? You're in the right place. So grab a magnifying glass, wipe the dust off those old coins, and let's go on a hunt for hidden value deep into the fascinating history of Canada's 1-cent pieces. Let's get started. First up, the 1953 Canadian penny, a coin that has captured the imagination of collectors around the globe. Whether you're a seasoned collector or just someone fascinated by the stories behind old coins, this little 1-cent coin has a story that's larger than life, a tale of history, craftsmanship, and of course, value. So sit back, and let's uncover why the 1953 Canadian penny in fine condition has become a sought-after treasure in today's auction market. To truly appreciate the 1953 penny, we must first set the stage. The early 1950s in Canada were a period of post-war growth and optimism. The country was transitioning from wartime austerity to an era of prosperity and modernization. Coins minted during this period carry with them not only monetary value but also the historical and cultural essence of a nation forging its identity. The 1953 penny was produced during the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, who had ascended to the throne just the year before, in 1952, following the death of her father, King George VI. This transition marked a symbolic moment in Canadian history, as the coins began to feature the young Queen's effigy, reflecting the dawn of a new era. Holding a 1953 Canadian penny is not just holding a piece of copper, it is holding a fragment of history, a tangible connection to the early years of Queen Elizabeth's reign and to a Canada that was on the cusp of modernization. Now, let's dive into the coin itself. The 1953 Canadian penny is a fascinating piece of numismatic artistry. It is made primarily of bronze, a composition of copper, tin, and zinc, giving it a warm, reddish-brown hue that patinates beautifully over time. The obverse of the coin features the effigy of Queen Elizabeth II, youthful and regal, with her name inscribed around the edge. Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina, a Latin phrase translating to Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen. This portrait is not only a representation of royal authority, but also a symbol of continuity, as Canada transitioned from the long reign of George VI to the new monarchy. On the reverse side, we find the iconic maple leaf wreath, a quintessential Canadian emblem. The wreath encircles the denomination, 1 cent, and the date, 1953, with the word Canada proudly stamped above. The design is both elegant and simple, reflecting a period when coins were as much about artistry as they were about function. What makes the 1953 penny particularly interesting to collectors is not just its design, but its rarity and the conditions in which these coins have survived. Many pennies from this era were circulated heavily. In everyday transactions, they passed through countless hands, accumulating scratches, nicks, and wear. Finding a 1953 penny in fine condition where the details of the Queen's portrait and the maple leaf wreath remain clearly visible is increasingly difficult today. Fine condition for a coin of this age is defined by visible major features, with slight wear on high points and minimal damage or corrosion. Coins that have been well preserved, perhaps tucked away in old coin albums or stored carefully by their original owners, are highly prized. The scarcity of these well-maintained specimens is what drives the excitement among collectors. When a 1953 Canadian penny in fine condition appears in an auction, it often sparks a flurry of interest, bidding wars, and sometimes, eye-watering prices. The current market value of the 1953 Canadian penny varies depending on its condition, rarity, and provenance. On average, coins in fine condition may range from $367,000, reflecting their demand among collectors who value both historical significance and aesthetic appeal. However, Coins with exceptional attributes such as higher grades, proof-like surfaces, or notable die variations can achieve significantly higher prices at auctions. In some cases, rare specimens have sold for several $576,000, and coins with particularly unique characteristics have even reached values approaching or exceeding $1.5 million. The auction market for Canadian pennies is robust, with collectors worldwide actively seeking these coins for their collections, museums, and investment portfolios. This high demand is fueled not only by the coin's historical importance but also by its limited availability in well-preserved condition, which makes each purchase an opportunity to own a tangible piece of Canadian history. Collectors who specialize in Canadian pennies often advise careful handling and proper storage, and the 1953 penny is no exception. Because of its copper composition, it is prone to oxidation and color change if exposed to moisture or harsh chemicals. Maintaining its condition requires protective holders, gentle cleaning only if necessary, and a stable, dry environment. Displaying it in albums or acrylic cases not only preserves its aesthetic appeal but also enhances its market value. Provenance, or the documented history of the coin's ownership, can also play a crucial role. Coins with verified histories, especially those that have passed through notable collections, tend to attract higher bids. For collectors, acquiring a 1953 penny is about more than simply owning a coin. It's about owning a piece of Canada's story, a fragment of the mid-20th century that continues to resonate with each passing year. Now, let's talk about the uniqueness that makes the 1953 penny stand out in any collection. Beyond the general appeal of a coin from the early Elizabethan era, there are subtle features that discerning collectors watch for. The quality of the minting, the sharpness of the leaf details, the clarity of the Queen's features, and even the alignment of the date and lettering can significantly affect desirability. Misstrikes, double strikes, or other mint errors are particularly sought after and can elevate a coin's value astronomically. Even within the standard issues, differences in color, luster, or patina can make one penny more desirable than another. Each coin carries a fingerprint of history, a testament to the era and the circumstances under which it was produced. In essence, no two 1953 pennies are exactly alike, which adds to their allure and collectability. As we reflect on the journey of the 1953 Canadian penny from its minting to its current status in the collector market, it is clear that this coin represents more than monetary worth. It is a bridge between generations, a tangible reminder of post-war Canada, and a testament to the enduring appeal of numismatics. For those who hold these coins, whether inherited from family or discovered in old change boxes, there is an undeniable thrill in knowing that a simple copper coin can hold historical significance, artistic beauty, and financial value all at once. The market for such coins is vibrant and ever-changing, but one thing remains constant: the demand for well-preserved, fine-condition specimens continues to rise, reflecting the timeless fascination humans have with history, rarity, and the stories that everyday objects can tell. For collectors looking to acquire a 1953 Canadian penny, patience and knowledge are key. Researching past auction results, understanding grading standards, and networking with other collectors can provide valuable insights. Visiting coin shows, joining numismatic societies, and consulting expert appraisers can also help collectors make informed decisions. The excitement of finding a fine-condition 1953 penny, knowing its historical context, and understanding its potential future value adds a layer of enjoyment that goes beyond the financial aspect. Collecting is as much about passion as it is about profit, and this coin exemplifies that principle beautifully. The 1953 Canadian penny in fine condition is far more than a humble 1-cent piece. It is a piece of living history, a work of art, and a tangible investment in the world of numismatics. From its striking depiction of a young Queen Elizabeth II to its beautifully detailed maple leaf wreath, every aspect of the coin tells a story of mid-20th century Canada. Its rarity, the challenges of preservation, and the excitement it generates in auctions today all contribute to its status as a prized collectible. Whether you are a seasoned collector, an investor in rare coins, or simply someone who appreciates history in its tangible form, the 1953 Canadian penny offers a journey into the past and a glimpse of the enduring value of careful preservation. Next up we talk about one very special everyday object, a 1986 Canadian penny, a humble 1-cent piece of currency that most people once tossed in a piggy bank or pocket with no thought, and now can be something much more. Today, in this video, we're going to dive deep into the fascinating world of the 1986 Canadian penny from its historical roots and design story, to what makes some of these coins sought after in collector markets today, all the way through to what they're worth in real dollars and how you can spot something valuable in your collection. Whether you're a seasoned coin enthusiast or someone who just found one of these in your pocket, by the end of this video, you'll understand the story behind this coin, its place in numismatic history, and how to make smart decisions if you're thinking about collecting or selling one. So, buckle up, this is more than just loose change. Let's wind back the clock to 1986. Canada was a nation thriving in the last decade of the 20th century, full of cultural shifts, political change, and, as always, everyday commerce that required simple currency. Among the coins circulating in wallets and cash registers was the Canadian 1-cent piece, the penny. This coin had been around for well over a century. Canada first began minting its own cents in the mid-19th century, and over the decades the penny became one of the most recognized and widely used coins in the country. For generations, Canadians dropped these pennies into parking meters, used them to make exact change, or simply set them aside without a second thought. By 1986, the coin you would find in your pocket had a long lineage. Minted by the Royal Canadian Mint, this penny continued a design tradition that had become iconic. On the front, a portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, a representation of Canada's connection to the Commonwealth, and on the back, 2 maple leaves on a single twig, a symbol of national identity and nature's simplicity. Here's a cool thing, despite being common, millions were minted. These coins are no longer found in circulation. That's because Canada removed the penny from everyday use in 2013. The government stopped distributing them at banks, and today, while they're still technically legal tender, they're rarely seen in cash transactions any longer. For many people, then, a 1986 penny is more of a memory in metal than a piece of pocket change, a physical remnant of a bygone time. Let's talk about what this coin actually looks like, because design is at the heart of why people collect coins in the first place. The 1986 Canadian penny measures about 19.05 millimeters in diameter, and weighs approximately 2.5 grams. It's made primarily from copper, about 98% copper, with small amounts of tin and zinc, giving it that rich, reddish-bronze appearance that many people associate with classic pennies. On the obverse side of the coin, you'll see the effigy of Queen Elizabeth II. In 1986 she was still relatively young, and this portrait captures that era, her regal presence framed by the inscription, Elizabeth II DG Regina, which stands for Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen. Flip the coin over, and on the reverse, you'll find the unmistakable image of 2 maple leaves on one stem, a design by famed engraver George Kruger Gray. This simple yet elegant botanical symbol tells a much larger story about Canada itself, rooted in nature, growing together, and unique among world coinage. The words Canada, 1 cent, and the year 1986 frame this design. One subtle detail that coin lovers pay attention to is the composition. In years prior to the late 1990s, Canadian pennies were almost entirely bronze. Later pennies shifted to plated steel. But the 1986 version remains a true bronze coin, meaning its metal content alone is part of its appeal to collectors and even to those who watch copper markets. Now here's where things start to get interesting for collectors and treasure seekers. Most 1986 pennies you encounter were widely circulated. They changed hands in everyday commerce, phone booths, vending machines, and lunch counters. That's not shocking after all, millions of these were minted, and at the time they were meant to be spent, not saved. But here's the twist. While circulated coins are common, condition matters hugely when we talk about value. Coins are graded on a spectrum that ranges from heavily worn to virtually untouched, where every edge, every detail, and every glint of original mint luster remains pristine. In the world of numismatics, that's coin collecting, this grading affects value dramatically. A circulated 1986 penny, the kind you might find in a handful of old coins, is usually worth no more than a few cents above face value. In fact, most circulated examples trade for roughly between $496,000 in collector markets. Unless your coin has something special in its condition or features, it's likely to be a financial jackpot. Coins that have survived with little wear, maybe tucked away in a coin album or forgotten in a box, can fall into the almost uncirculated category. These might fetch a bit more. And then there are truly uncirculated examples or coins with rare errors. Well, we'll talk about those next. Couple this idea with the fact that these pennies aren't minted anymore, and everyday collectors now treat them like artifacts of history. Even if a circulated penny isn't worth a pile of cash, it's still a tangible slice of economic heritage. In the numismatic world, these are called era coins, coins where something went, off, during striking at the mint. These can range from off-center strikes and doubled dies to clipped planchets, or other irregularities. When these errors are present and visible, the coin becomes more than just a piece of currency, it becomes a rare collector's item. For the 1986 Canadian penny, there are documented error varieties that have caught collector attention. Doubled die errors where lettering or design elements appear doubled due to misalignment during striking. Off-center strikes where part of the image is missing because the coin wasn't perfectly aligned in the press. Die cracks or raised metal flaws, unusual lines or blobs of metal where the die cracked. Clipped planchets, portions of the coin missing from its edge, often creating a unique shape. Some of these errors can take a common coin and, under the right conditions, push its value way above the normal range, sometimes into the tens or even hundreds of dollars, especially if the coin grades well after professional evaluation. And yes, while most 1986 pennies are common, the rarest errors are precisely what collectors hunt for. In some YouTube videos and reports, rare pennies, even from other years, have sold for astonishing amounts. One mentioned a penny selling for $160,000 at auction because of exceptional rarity. While this isn't typical for 1986 pennies specifically, it highlights just how valuable error coins can be when everything lines up. So if you think your old penny is just scratched, or funny looking, don't toss it, especially if the irregularity is noticeable and consistent. Those oddities might hide serious value. The market. Let's talk numbers. The 1986 Canadian penny, depending on its condition and any unique characteristics, can range from a few dollars for standard circulated pieces to several $358,000 for coins with rare errors or exceptional quality. In recent auctions, certain specimens have even exceeded expectations, commanding prices far above what casual observers might anticipate. This surge in value is driven by increasing collector interest, scarcity of well-preserved examples, and the growing appreciation for Canadian numismatic history. For those looking to invest or simply start their collection, understanding these market dynamics is key. If you've stuck with me this far, you're probably curious what you should do next, whether you're just beginning your coin collecting journey, or you think you've found something valuable. First, don't clean your coins. Cleaning may seem like it makes them shine, but it destroys the natural surface and drastically reduces collector value. Natural toning and original surfaces are far more desirable. Second, learn to grade your coins roughly by eye. A circulated coin that still shows sharp details on the leaves and queen's portrait is worth more than one that's flat and worn. Look at the highest points of the coin to judge where, if you believe your coin has an error, get it evaluated by a professional. Services like PCGS, NGC, or ICCS will authenticate and grade the coin. A certified error coin can command far higher prices. And finally, remember that collecting is about passion as much as profit. Some people build full collections year by year, focusing on specific designs, mint marks, or historical periods. Even common coins carry stories worth preserving. So let's bring this full circle. The 1986 Canadian penny was once humble pocket change, common, everyday, not much to write home about. But today, in the world of numismatics, that same penny has become a link to history, design, art, and collector fascination. Yes, most circulated examples are worth just pennies over face value. But the real magic lies in condition, rarity, and discovery. Spotting an error, recognizing a top-grade coin, understanding the story behind the symbols stamped into bronze decades ago. Whether you're a seasoned collector or someone who just found one in your wallet, the lesson is the same. Look closely at the past, and you might find value both historical and monetary where others saw only change. Next up, imagine, for a moment, holding a small round button of bronze in the palm of your hand, no bigger than your fingertip, but carrying within its copper heart a story that spans decades. A coin so common that once upon a time, it jingled in the pockets of schoolchildren and paid for penny candies at corner stores. Yet today, that same coin, when found in just the right condition, can whisper tales of history and, for some collectors, unlock real value in the auction world. We're diving deep into the world of the 1964 Canadian 1-cent penny, a piece of metal that many toss aside without a second glance, but that has a rich story and surprising life in the collector's market. This is not just a dry lecture about mintages and market charts. This is a coin's life story, its birth into circulation, its features that set it apart, why some examples have become sought after, how much they're actually worth today in US dollars, and what you should know if you're a collector hoping to spot something special. So let's begin at the beginning. When you first hear 1964 Canadian penny, you might think, oh, that's just another old cent. And you'd be right and wrong at the same time. The 1964 penny was far from rare in its day. The Royal Canadian Mint produced hundreds of millions of these small bronze cents for everyday use. They passed from pocket to pocket, clinked into parking meters, and sat in jars on dressers across Canada. But today, in a world where pennies are no longer part of everyday transactions in Canada, indeed they were officially withdrawn from circulation in 2013, even a humble penny from 1964 evokes nostalgia, history, and curiosity among collectors everywhere. So what makes this unassuming coin worthy of attention in 2026? The answer lies not in its face value 1 cent but in its story, design, condition, and the collector community that gives it a second life. This is a journey into what makes the 1964 Canadian penny interesting, and for some people, surprisingly valuable. To understand why any coin matters, we must first understand where it came from. The Canadian penny has a long and storied history, first minted in 1858, and serving as the smallest denomination of Canadian currency for more than a century and a half. It wasn't just a coin. It was part of daily life, an everyday token that reflected the nation's identity. By the time we reached 1964, this coin had become very familiar. The century had turned, Queen Elizabeth II was on the throne, and her youthful portrait graced the obverse of this coin. This was the first portrait of the Queen used on many Canadian coins, depicting her at around 27 years old, with the Latin inscription, Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina, meaning, Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, the Queen. On the reverse side, you find a simple but iconic Canadian symbol, 2 maple leaves on a single twig designed by the artist George Edward Kruger Gray. These leaves weren't just decoration, they were a proud nod to the maple leaf as a symbol of Canada's natural beauty, resilience, and national identity. The 1964 penny was made of 98% copper, with small amounts of tin and zinc, giving it that warm bronze color many collectors find so appealing. It weighed about 3.24 grams with a diameter of 19.05 millimeters and a plain edge. Between its appealing design and wide circulation, the penny of 1964 was a familiar sight. But familiarity doesn't always translate to high collectible value, especially when hundreds of millions were produced. That leads us to ask, if millions were made, why should anyone care today? Enter the world of condition, rarity, and the collector market. Here's the fascinating part. While the vast majority of 1964 Canadian pennies are common and worth little more than their face value or a sentimental glance, certain features and conditions can elevate a coin's appeal. The coin's basic look stayed the same for a decade, but subtle differences and minor minting oddities give collectors something to search for. At its most basic, the 1964 penny looks like what you might expect: Queen Elizabeth II on one side and maple leaves on the other. But within this generic appearance lie a handful of varieties and minting nuances that can pique a collector's interest. For example, some coins may show die deterioration, doubling where the die used to strike the coin has worn to the point that certain design elements appear doubled. Die clash errors, double die averse, and other mint errors sometimes pop up. These irregularities occur during the striking process when the dies are misaligned, worn, or struck against each other without a planchet in place. While many coin experts might treat these as minor imperfections, serious collectors know these varieties can be worth more than standard coins when authenticated and graded. But remember, genuine mint errors are quite rare. There are countless videos online claiming incredible values for everyday pennies, and not all of them are grounded in reality. Many 1964 pennies with alleged rare features turn out to be circulated coins worth only a fraction more than face value or copper melt value. That's why expert grading and authentication become crucial when dealing with potential rarities. This is where things start to get really interesting. In the coin world, rarity doesn't just mean the number of coins minted. It means how many of those coins exist today in a condition that collectors desire. Most 1964 pennies were used in everyday transactions for years, worn down, scratched, faded. When a coin shows heavy wear, it's typically worth no more than face value or its copper content. But set that same coin aside in a condition that shows minimal wear, a surface that still shimmers with its original bronze luster, and you're in a different ballpark. Coins are graded on a scale from poor to mint state, with mint state grades indicating coins with no wear from circulation. In the grading world, a 1964 penny in fine condition, meaning the coin shows moderate but even wear with most details still clear, is already a step above the everyday pocket find. But if you take that to extremely fine or mint state, the value begins to climb. Collectors also pay attention to color designations, something specific to copper coins. A coin with bright, original reddish color, often called red or RD, is generally more desirable than one that's turned brown BN or red-brown RB due to oxidation. Even among coins with the same grade, the one with the better color can fetch more from collectors. The 1964 penny isn't inherently rare in the same way a 1936 Canadian penny is. Some of those coins minted in tiny numbers or with unique test strikes can be worth $1.6 million or more. But the 1964 penny's rarity comes from high-condition survivors and certified specimens, not sheer scarcity. The mintage for 1964 was nearly 500 million coins, a very large number, but how many of those survive today in top condition? That's where collectors find value. Let's talk numbers, because this is where theory meets reality. A typical circulated 1964 Canadian penny, even with relatively light wear, generally holds little value beyond its face or possibly a few US cents for its copper content. Many collectors on forums note that circulated 1964 pennies are common enough to be worth only their metal value or a small premium for being vintage. A well-preserved uncirculated piece at around MS-60 might fetch a few dollars in today's market. Move up to MS-63 or MS-65 with a strong red color, and prices can climb into the $565,000 range or higher. Exceptional specimens, especially those submitted for professional grading and certified by services like PCGS or NGC, can fetch far more. More remarkable examples, especially error coins, can fetch beyond these typical ranges. Minor errors might sell for a $1.7 million, moderate errors more, and major errors like strong double die strikes or off-center strikes, rare though they are, can sell into the hundreds or potentially even thousands depending on collector demand. Unlike some legendary coins that sell for 5 or 6 figures, a standard 1964 Canadian penny, even in fine condition, is not guaranteed to be a treasure that will retire you comfortably. Collectors on dedicated coin forums often reiterate that unless there's a documented error or exceptionally high grade, most 1964 pennies remain modestly valued. That being said, every collector started somewhere, and sometimes that modest penny with a beautiful original red sheen becomes someone's prized find. So what should you do if you find an old penny in a drawer or a jar of coins and wonder, could this be valuable? Here's the art of coin hunting. Don't rely on memory or loose online videos claiming outrageous values. Many sensationalized online posts inflate prices for common coins. Instead, educate yourself with objective reference guides and professional grading resources. Learn to grade coins visually. Familiarize yourself with terms like nice fine, very fine, extremely fine, and mint state. Coins with sharper details, minimal wear, and original color are what collectors prize. If you think you've found something unusual, an error, doubling, or a coin with remarkable color and strike, consider having it professionally graded. Organizations like PCGS or NGC provide authentication and grading that can significantly impact a coin's resale value. Storage also matters. Keep collectible coins away from humidity and abrasion. Use acid-free holders or flips, avoid harsh cleaning, and document any findings you think might be special. As we hold that tiny bronze disc, it's easy to forget how much human history it represents. The 1964 Canadian 1-cent coin didn't just buy goods in a store, it passed through the hands of everyday Canadians, symbolized the young queen's reign, and now lives on as an artifact of human commerce, culture, and curiosity. Is it rare? Not in the sense of low mintage, but rare enough in high condition and in certain varieties that collectors still seek it out. Is it valuable? Yes, but with nuance. Ordinary circulated coins may only be worth cents in USD, but uncirculated, high-grade, or error examples can reach prices that surprise even seasoned hobbyists. Ultimately, the story of the 1964 Canadian penny reminds us that value isn't only in metal or monetary worth, it's in the story, the history, and the joy of discovery. Whether you're a seasoned collector or someone who just found this coin in a dusty jar, take a moment to appreciate its journey. Because sometimes, the smallest objects tell the biggest stories. If you want, I can break this script into time-stamped YouTube chapters, or tailor it with a specific storytelling tone, dramatic, humorous, educational, for your channel style. Just let me know. Imagine, for a moment, holding a small round button of bronze in the palm of your hand, no bigger than your fingertip, but carrying within its copper heart a story that spans decades. A coin so common that once upon a time, it jingled in the pockets of schoolchildren and paid for penny candies at corner stores. Yet today, that same coin, when found in just the right condition, can whisper tales of history and, for some collectors, unlock real value in the auction world. Today, we're diving deep into the world of the 1964 Canadian 1-cent penny, a piece of metal that many toss aside without a second glance, but that has a rich story and surprising life in the collector's market. Next up, imagine for a moment that you're sifting through that old jar of coins your grandparents handed down, the ones sitting quietly in the closet for decades. You grab a handful of small copper coins, and as you sort through them you notice one that stops you in your tracks. A 1976 Canadian penny, worn, slightly dirty, edges smooth from years in circulation, yet unmistakable with its familiar date and iconic maple leaf design. You hold it up to the light, curious about its story, what it represents, where it's been, maybe even how much it could be worth today. This simple 1-cent piece, minted in the mid-1970s, is at the heart of countless collector conversations around the world. And today, in this video, we're going to dive deep all the way from its origins and design to its place on the modern collector market, including how and why even a worn, circulated example can attract interest, and in rare cases pull prices that enter the realm of multiple thousands of US dollars. So settle in, because this isn't just another coin review. This is a narrative journey through history, rarity, risk, and reward, and by the end of it, you might just look at that old penny jar in a whole new way. To understand the 1976 Canadian penny, we first have to go back a bit, not just to 1976 itself, but to how the Canadian 1-cent coin became such an enduring part of everyday life in Canada. The Canadian penny has a long lineage, tracing its roots to the earliest days of Canadian coinage. But the design that most of us immediately recognize, the maple leaf twig reverse, and the effigy of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II on the obverse, became a defining symbol of Canada's currency throughout the latter half of the 20th century. By 1976, the penny had been in continuous production for decades, serving as the backbone of everyday small change transactions. It was a coin used by farmers at the country store, by children at the corner candy shop, and by bus drivers making change for commuters. It was humble, practical, often overlooked, and yet, in its own way, it was woven into the fabric of Canadian daily life. The year 1976 itself was significant in Canadian history. Culturally and politically, it was a time preceding major events like the upcoming 1982 Constitution patriation and a decade before the eventual phase-out of the penny itself in 2013. In 1976, the penny still had decades of circulation ahead of it, but it already bore the hallmarks of a long-lived design and a rich tradition. Physically, the 1976 penny was made of a classic bronze composition, approximately 98% copper, with the balance in tin and zinc, giving it that warm, reddish-brown hue collectors affectionately associate with older, pre-1982 coins. In your hand, it feels solid, familiar, and connected to a time when coins were not only currency but conversation pieces. On the obverse, the head's side, sits the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Arnold Mackin. Her effigy, graceful and dignified, is surrounded by the inscription, Elizabeth II DG Regina, an abbreviated Latin phrase meaning, "By the grace of God, Queen." On the reverse, the tail's side, are the two maple leaves on a single twig, the quintessential symbol of Canada's natural heritage, created by renowned designer G. Kruger Gray. Despite this familiar design, 1976 was not a year of major stylistic change for the penny. There were no commemorative motifs, no mint marks to denote unusual strikes, just the steadfast design that had been in circulation for years. That means, on the surface, this coin appears ordinary. But as we'll discover, context matters. So what makes the 1976 Canadian penny unique? At first glance, not much. It doesn't have a commemorative design or a special mint mark. In fact, it's one of the more normal pennies of the era. But that's actually part of its charm, and part of what makes it fascinating to collectors. For one thing, the design itself is iconic. The two maple leaves were not just aesthetic choice, they embody Canadian identity and pride, a motif seen across Canadian currency for decades. The portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, meanwhile, represents a specific era of Canadian coinage, the Mackin portrait, a style also used on British coins and seen around the world. Physically, these coins are solid and tangible, a diameter of 19.05 millimeters, a weight of about 3.24 grams, and a smooth, plain edge meant for everyday pocket use. The materials and manufacturing techniques reflect a period before the rising cost of copper made penny production uneconomical, a reality that eventually contributed to the coin's discontinuation decades later. But beyond the standard design, the 1976 coin's uniqueness for collectors comes from the subtle variations and minting quirks that can occur during production. While there are no widely recognized, major varieties, like a rare die variety or double minted date, there are minor die variations, striking anomalies, and mint errors that can make certain specimens significantly more interesting to specialty collectors. Examples of these include minor doubling, die cracks, and other slight anomalies, the kind of things that most circulated coins show to some degree but that prized examples display in a dramatic way. What this means is that in their everyday circulated form, most coins look much the same. But hidden among those commonplace examples are those rare gems, the ones struck just a bit differently, that can capture the imagination of a collector and, in rare cases, command serious attention at auction. Now let's talk about something every coin enthusiast comes back to again and again: condition. If you find a 1976 penny that's been in circulation for decades, it will show signs of where edges softened, details on the maple leaves and queen's portraits smoothed down, possibly small scratches or nicks from passing through countless hands. And in the grand scheme of coin collecting, that's also what makes each coin feel like a tiny time capsule with a story etched into every little imperfection. In the collector world, condition is everything. A coin in poor condition, perhaps heavily worn, scratched, or corroded, might be worth only its face value or a little above. But as the condition improves, so does desirability and value. Most circulated 1976 pennies you'll come across in pocket change or old coin jars fall into this category: everyday wear and tear that tells the story of their life. For the average collector, these coins are common, familiar, and largely valued for nostalgic reasons rather than monetary ones. In most cases, a circulated 1976 penny might be worth just a few cents, sometimes up to around $1 if the eye appeal is relatively high and wear is modest. And this is where numismatics gets really intriguing. There are exceptions. Even coins that were technically used in circulation can sometimes be condition rarities. Maybe one coin was tucked away for decades with minimal handling. Maybe it escaped the daily grind and maintained sharper details than most. Or maybe, just maybe, it bears subtle errors that make it stand out from its peers. To a casual observer, one 1976 penny might look just like another. But to a trained eye, the condition nuances, the strike quality, the color tones, the symmetry of the lettering and leaves tell a completely different story. Alright, so here's the part many of you have been waiting for. What is a 1976 Canadian penny worth today? If all of that history and design talk made this coin sound rare, I've got good news and I've got reality check. For typical circulated examples, the ones you or I might find in a jar of loose change, these coins are usually not rare in the strictest sense. Over 700 million of them were minted in 1976, meaning they were everywhere in everyday Canadian wallets and cash registers. In terms of market value, most circulated examples are worth roughly slightly above face value, a couple of cents to maybe $1 or $2 at most, depending on eye appeal and condition. But here's where things get interesting. Because within that massive population of coins, there are subsets and variations that have far greater collector appeal, and some of those have sold for significantly more, even entering the thousands of US dollars range in rare cases. The majority of collector value for a coin like this hinges on three things: grade, eye appeal, and rarity. A well-preserved, high-grade uncirculated specimen can fetch $496,000 depending on grade and coloration. Certain error varieties, such as striking on an incorrect planchet, severe off-center strikes, or other dramatic anomalies, have been known to sell for $10,000s and, in some documented cases, over $68,000. Enthusiastic collectors have paid significant premiums for examples like a penny struck on a 10-cent or nickel planchet, or coins with extreme off-center strikes, especially in higher grades. One documented 1976 penny error that was struck off-center and on an incorrect blank reportedly sold for prices well above standard coin values, at times crossing the $1.2 million mark. Let that sink in. The same basic coin you see every day can, in rare instances, command prices that make headlines when the right combination of error plus state of preservation comes into play. These high values are extremely rare. Most 1976 Canadian pennies, even in nice condition, will not sell for thousands. Many will still trade for modest prices unless they have a rare characteristic. Authentication matters. To reach the upper levels of the market, especially into the thousands, these coins must be authenticated and graded by professional services such as PCGS or NGC. Without that verification, even a spectacular find won't reach its full potential on the market. Still, the fact that such sales have happened is what keeps collectors dreaming and coin jars full of possibilities. So, in practical terms, if you find a 1976 penny that looks fairly average, It's worth modestly more than face value, perhaps a few cents to a couple dollars. If you find one with a striking error or exceptional condition that stands out from the crowd, you could be holding something that brings real collector attention, potentially into the high hundreds or low thousands of USD. Those are the stories that get passed around collector circles. With all that in mind, how do you approach collecting these coins, especially if you think you might have found something special? The difference between a virtually worthless coin and a valuable one often comes down to condition. Learn what terms like very fine, extremely fine, uncirculated, and mint state actually mean. Compare your coin to known grade standards, or better yet, have an experienced collector or dealer take a look. If you think you might have something special, professional grading can unlock real value. Slabbed coins, those sealed in a protective holder with a verified grade, often sell for significantly more than raw examples. It's an upfront cost, but for high-end finds, it's almost always worthwhile. Values fluctuate over time. What was once a worthless coin can rise in demand as tastes shift or as new discoveries come to light. Follow auction results and respected coin forums to see what real collectors are paying. Even though most circulated 1976 pennies are common, don't overlook them entirely. Sometimes 2 uncluttered eyes and a magnifying glass are all it takes to spot something unusual. Many high-value finds start as ordinary coins that caught someone's attention. Most importantly, remember that coins like this are history you can hold in your hand. Not every coin will make you wealthy, but every coin has a story, and that's part of the joy. So where does that leave us with the 1976 Canadian penny in circulated condition? This coin is, on the surface, a humble piece of metal that served as everyday currency for millions of Canadians. It's not inherently rare. Over 700 million were minted, and most examples will remain modest in value. But within that enormous population are tiny pockets of rarity coins with unique characteristics, exceptional grades, and intriguing stories that transform a simple penny into a collector's treasure. For most of us, the 1976 penny will remain a nostalgic relic of a bygone era of pocket change, a reminder of everyday life in the 1970s, a symbol of Canadian identity, and a potential doorway into the fascinating world of coin collecting. But for the keen-eyed and curious, every 1976 penny, even one that's seen decades of circulation, is a chance to discover something remarkable. If you've ever found one of these coins in a jar, an old wallet, or a drawer, don't brush it aside too quickly. Give it a moment's respect, a careful look under good light, and who knows? You might just be holding a small piece of history worth more than you think. Next up, imagine holding in your hand a coin that once jingled in pockets from Vancouver to Halifax. A tiny piece of metal that touched the fingertips of everyday Canadians for decades. A coin so humble, so ubiquitous, that most people barely gave it a second glance, yet today, collectors around the world look at it in a whole new light. This is the story of the Canadian 1978 1-cent penny, a coin that's worth far more in the world of numismatics than its face value suggests, if you know what you're looking for. We're diving deep, all the way from the minting presses of the Royal Canadian Mint to the auction tables and collector forums of 2026. We'll talk history, design, rarity, what makes certain 1978 pennies stand out, and just how much they're trading for today, not just in Canadian dollars, but in US dollars as well. And stick with me, because by the end of this video you'll know exactly what to look for if you ever find one of these coins in your pocket change. Let's travel back to a time before smartphones, before streaming video, and before digital banking, back to 1978, when physical money was king, and pennies were part of everyday life in Canada. The Canadian penny, officially the 1-cent coin, has a storied history, first entering circulation in the 19th century. For over a century and a half, pennies were minted and used in daily transactions across Canada. They passed from hand to hand in markets, in change jars, and in cash registers from coast to coast. The 1978 penny was part of that tapestry. In 1978, Canada's economy was growing, and the humble penny was still essential for cash transactions. It was minted at the Royal Canadian Mint in Ottawa, a facility known for producing coins with precision and heritage. Over 868 million of these pennies were struck, making the 1978 edition extremely common in terms of numbers. The obverse side of the penny, the front you see first, features Queen Elizabeth II, elegantly portrayed in a design by Arnold Mackin, wearing a tiara and the Latin inscription, Elizabeth II DG Regina, which translates to, Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen. This effigy connects the coin to Canada's constitutional monarchy tradition, one that endured throughout the 20th century. Flip the coin over and you'll see a small yet powerful Canadian symbol, two maple leaves on a single twig designed by G. Kruger Gray. This motif had become emblematic of Canadian sense since the 1930s and remained unchanged for decades. For many Canadians of that era, this coin wasn't rare or remarkable. It was everyday money. But for collectors today, those everyday details hold clues to value, condition, and history. You might be thinking, it's just a penny, how special can it be? But the story gets rich once you look past the surface. First, let's talk composition and physical traits. The 1978 penny is composed primarily of 98% copper, with small amounts of tin and zinc giving it that iconic reddish-brown luster when uncirculated. It measures about 19.05 millimeters in diameter and weighs just over 3 grams. Now, composition matters. In later years, as metal prices changed, the Canadian Mint shifted the materials used in 1-cent coins. But in 1978, pennies were still this classic bronze alloy, giving them a distinct look and feel that many collectors adore. Through this surface lies nuance. Small differences in how individual coins were struck, slight variations in the depth of the engraving, the crispness of the maple leaves, or the sheen on the Queen's portrait can affect the coin's appeal. Coins that exhibit full original luster with vibrant optical qualities, what collectors often call full red coloration, are much more desirable than those that have faded to brown over decades of circulation. Then there are the errors, those quirks from the minting process that make a few coins stand out from the millions. A rare off-center strike, a die crack that creates a raised line across the surface, or even a clipped planchet where part of the coin never formed. These anomalies can turn an ordinary penny into a collectible treasure. While such errors are not common in 1978 pennies, when they do occur and are authentic, the numismatic world takes notice. But before we get too enchanted by errors, let's be clear, the standard 1978 penny is rare in circulation. Its mintage was enormous, and most examples seen today are common and traded among collectors at modest prices, but that doesn't mean there's no value. It simply means that condition matters. And this brings us to the heart of why collectors pay attention to these coins. This is where the story gets fascinating. A 1978 Canadian penny in your pocket change? Most likely it's worth 1 cent. But a 1978 penny in fine condition, that's an entirely different chapter. In numismatics, condition is everything. Coins are graded along a scale that describes their state, from worn and faded to pristine and uncirculated. A fine grade means a coin shows moderate wear but still retains most design details, a prized state for many collectors since it tells a story of real circulation without erasing its character. But beyond fine lies very fine, extremely fine, and then the realm of uncirculated and mint state examples. These are coins that have never been used in everyday commerce. They hold their mint luster, the gleam from the factory, often with a bright, reddish surface that collectors call red uncirculated. In circulation, most 1978 pennies are incredibly common because of the massive mintage. They were everyday money, and most people spent them or tossed them into jars. In fine or higher condition, these coins become less common. Many pennies see circulation where within months or years of minting. A fine example shows noticeable wear but retains enough design to be collectible. In uncirculated condition, this is where coins start to stand out. Coins never placed into circulation, with sharp details and strong color, are much scarcer. Collector demand increases. With errors or varieties, this is the realm of true collector intrigue. Even rare mint errors from this year, though not abundant, can command significant premiums. Still, as we'll see, even in uncirculated condition, these coins generally don't reach astronomical values, but they're far more compelling than their face value. The current market value of the 1978 Canadian penny reflects this balance of availability and desirability. In circulated condition, it might fetch modest sums, but a fine condition specimen can significantly exceed expectations. Auctions have seen these coins reach into the $275,000 for top-tier examples, especially when they display exceptional detail or have been professionally graded by recognized numismatic organizations. Some particularly well-preserved coins even cross the threshold into the $485,000 of US dollars, depending on their quality, provenance, and the interest of buyers in the moment. What's fascinating is that the market for these pennies is not static. It fluctuates with collector interest, economic trends, and even the broader fascination with Canadian coinage from the 20th century. For someone who understands this market, owning a 1978 penny in fine condition can be both a point of pride and a strategic financial move. So, you've got a 1978 Canadian penny in your hand. What now? Here's how to think like a collector. The biggest difference in value comes from how well the coin has survived decades. Look for sharp details on the Queen's portrait, crisp maple leaf veins on the reverse, and strong color. It might be tempting to make the coin look shiny, but cleaning can destroy collector value. Natural patina is often more desirable than artificial shine. Terms like fine EF, uncirculated, mint state, and red are how collectors communicate condition. Study these so you can assess coins yourself before paying for third-party grading. True mint errors can carry premiums, but you'll want expert authentication before assuming anything is valuable. Are you building a date set? Seeking top-quality coins? Or hunting for errors? Define your goal that makes collecting more rewarding and focused. Finally, remember that coin collecting is about passion as much as profit. Many collectors collect because each coin is a piece of history, a tangible link to a moment in time. The 1978 Canadian penny might seem like just a small piece of metal after all. At face value it was only 1 cent. But coins like this carry stories far richer than their denomination. They connect us to history, to design traditions, and to the everyday lives of people long before digital transactions dominated our world. While most 1978 pennies remain common among collectors, those in exceptional condition, with vibrant original color or intriguing mistakes, remind us that even the smallest pieces of history can have big stories and surprising worth. In the great tapestry of numismatics, each coin, no matter how humble, holds a world waiting to be explored. Next up, have you ever pulled an old penny out of a drawer and wondered, could this tiny piece of metal be worth real money today? Well, you're not alone. Coins have a magical way of connecting us to history, and sometimes they carry unexpected value beyond their face value. We're diving into one of Canada's most fascinating pieces of numismatic history. The commemorative Canadian penny, the 1-cent piece struck from 1867 to 1992. This isn't just any penny, it marks 125 years of Canada's Confederation. It's celebrated by collectors around the world, and in fine condition it can command surprisingly big numbers in the marketplace. So buckle up. In this video we'll tour its history and background, uncover its unique design features, talk about rarity and condition, reveal current market values in USD, share collector tips, and wrap up with why this humble penny still matters today. To understand the story of this coin, we need to travel back in time all the way to 1867. That year, Canada became a confederated nation, and with that milestone came a desire to establish a distinct national identity, including money. The first pennies struck for Canada were large bronze coins, introduced in the late 1850s, in the years leading up to Confederation. But by 1867, the penny had become a staple of Canadian currency, and its design reflected a new era, the dawn of the Canadian nation. Over the decades that followed, the Canadian penny evolved in subtle ways. Monarchs changed, designs adapted, and the coin shrunk in size. Yet it remained the humble backbone of everyday cash transactions until a special celebration arrived in 1992. That year marked the 125th anniversary of Confederation, 125 years since Canada became a unified country. To commemorate that landmark, the Royal Canadian Mint issued a special edition penny with the dates 1867 to 1992 on the reverse. This wasn't just any penny, it told the story of a nation through its most enduring denomination. The result? A design that both celebrates Canada's roots and makes this coin instantly recognizable, especially among collectors. Now let's talk about what makes this coin unique, both as a piece of history and as a collectible. First, the obverse or head side. On this side, you'll find the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, facing right, wearing a royal diadem and earrings. Around her, the inscription reads Elizabeth II D.G. Regina, Latin for by the grace of God, Queen. This image was designed by the celebrated sculptor Dora de Petithunt, and it reflects Canada's status as a constitutional monarchy during the Queen's long reign. On the reverse, or tail side, the design is what truly sets this coin apart. At the center are two classic maple leaves, the quintessential Canadian symbol. Above them is the denomination 1 cent, and below, the word Canada. To the left, in bold numerals, are the dates 1867-1992, commemorating 125 years since Confederation. To the right of the leaves are the initials KG, the mark of engraver George Kruger Gray, a longtime contributor to Canadian coinage. While today we think of pennies as round, the 1867-1992 Canadian 1 cent is actually dodecagonal, that's to say, it has a subtle 12-sided shape that's easy to feel but hard to notice at first glance. That makes it distinctive among small coins. Materially, the coin carries on Canada's long tradition of copper coins struck in a bronze alloy composed mainly of copper with small amounts of tin and zinc, weighing about 2.5 grams with a diameter around 19.1 millimeters. Rarity is another crucial factor that makes these pennies so coveted. Over the years, certain issues were struck in far fewer numbers, often due to limited commemorative releases or variations in minting errors. Coins that remain in fine or uncirculated condition are exceedingly rare, as circulation naturally wears down the delicate details over decades. Even small scratches or discoloration can significantly impact a coin's value, making those that have survived in excellent condition real treasures. For example, the 1920s and 1930s issues often appear less frequently in auctions because many were melted down or lost, while some late 20th century commemoratives were produced in limited editions for collectors, making them highly sought after today. Condition, rarity, and historical significance together create a trifecta that drives collector interest and auction prices to remarkable levels. The value of these commemorative Canadian pennies has grown substantially, reflecting both their historical importance and scarcity. While ordinary circulated pennies may sell for a few dollars, rare commemoratives in fine condition can fetch $565,000 of US dollars at auction. Certain exceptionally rare coins from the 19th century, especially those with minting anomalies or unique characteristics, have achieved prices exceeding several $687,000 in recent sales. The market is particularly competitive for those coins that celebrate landmark events or feature intricate, highly detailed designs. Auction houses, numismatic dealers, and private collectors recognize the enduring appeal of these coins, and their value continues to appreciate as interest in historical Canadian coinage remains strong. For collectors, there are a few key tips to keep in mind when seeking these treasures. First, always verify the authenticity of the coin through professional grading services. Subtle differences in design, wear, or mint marks can dramatically affect a coin's value, and expert verification ensures you are investing wisely. Second, consider the coin's provenance. Knowing its history and previous ownership can enhance both its collectible and financial worth. Third, handle coins carefully, ideally with gloves and in a controlled environment, to preserve their condition. And finally, stay informed about market trends and auction results. Following recent sales and valuations helps you gauge demand and identify the best opportunities to acquire significant pieces for your collection. So what's the final takeaway? The 1867 to 1992 Canadian penny may be small in size, but it packs a big story, and for collectors, it holds a fascinating blend of history, artistry, and potentially real value. It's a coin that spans over a century of Canadian life from the first days of Confederation to the modern era. Its design captures national identity with maple leaves and regal portraits. In fine and uncirculated condition, it becomes more than pocket change, it becomes a piece of heritage that collectors treasure. Whether you're a seasoned collector, someone who just found an old penny in a drawer, or a curious viewer wondering if that little coin could be worth something special, the 1867 to 1992 penny has a story worth exploring. Thanks for watching. If this video gave you insight, drop a comment below with what coin you want us to research next. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe, because treasures like these deserve to be unearthed together. Until next time, happy hunting.